So here's a situation I'm sure is familiar to a lot of you. You can read an English news article, maybe even a really dense academic paper, and you get it. You understand every single word.
Hmm.
But then the moment you open your mouth in a real conversation, those words, I don't know, they just feel clunky or awkward.
Or they just disappear.
Exactly, they vanish entirely. If that sounds like you, then this deep dive is custom made for you.
It's really the essential hurdle of language learning, isn't it? You have what we call grammatical competence. I mean, you know the rules, you know the
All
vocabulary,
right, the textbook stuff.
the textbook stuff, but you might lack communicative competence. Your passive knowledge, your input skills are excellent. But turning that into active, spontaneous speech, the output, that feels like a constant struggle.
Okay, let's unpack that term right away because it sounds critical. What is the real difference between knowing the rules and having the competence to actually use them?
Well, think of it this way. Grammatical competence is like knowing how to build an engine perfectly on paper.
Yeah.
You have the blueprint? Communicative competence is knowing how to drive that engine successfully through a busy city. It involves speed, rhythm, timing, intonation, and knowing what language is appropriate in what social context. It's all about performance, you know,
Mm,
not just knowledge.
that makes so much sense. So our mission today is to cut through all the noise and give you some highly actionable, research-backed strategies for radically improving spoken fluency. We're really targeting those output skills.
Yeah, and we're distilling this from a whole stack of sources, practical tutorials, academic case studies on learners from all over the world, from Hanoi to Jeddah, and a ton of expert recommendations.
The goal here is to give you a powerful speaking workout routine.
Exactly. You don't need a conversation partner every single minute of the day. We're focused on how you can train your speaking muscles effectively, even when you're practicing alone.
So if you're ready to start converting that deep passive understanding into confident, active speech, let's jump into the solo toolkit.
Let's do it.
The first and maybe the most intense technique that came up across our entire source stack is shadowing.
Yes, shadowing.
It's pure auditory and verbal mimicry.
It is, and it's deceptively simple. You listen to a short segment of native speech, like a video clip, a movie line, and you repeat it immediately. You're trying to say it at the exact same time as the speaker, like a delayed echo.
So you're not waiting for them to finish the sentence.
No, you're right on their heels, and you're focusing intensely on their intonation, their pacing, their pronunciation. You're almost trying to become them for that moment.
You know, the critique I often hear from learners is, if I'm just focused on mimicking sound, am I really practicing comprehension or grammar?
And that's sort of the wrong question to ask for this exercise. With shadowing, you're practicing the music of the language.
The music.
Yes. English is a stress-timed language. Rhythm and intonation are everything. If you don't nail the rise and fall of speech, your communication suffers no matter how perfect your grammar is. Shadowing helps you internalize that rhythm.
Okay, so if shadowing nails the sound, our second technique seems to focus more on the formal structure and word usage. Reading out loud.
All right, just pick up anything that's well-written, a great novel, an article, even a well-crafted email, and just articulate it.
And what's the benefit there over just reading it silently?
Reading out loud forces your mouth to produce the correct grammatical forms and verb tenses that your brain already knows but maybe hasn't used actively. You can slow down, you can check your own forms, monitor things like pluralization. You're basically forcing yourself to speak correctly.
One of our sources mentioned reading passages from philosophical texts like The Art of Living. Things like, nothing truly stops you, nothing truly holds you back, for your own will is always within your control.
And that trains both discipline and clarity. It's a great example. Which moves us on to method 3, visualizing and narrating. This is where you really start to leverage your environment to stop relying on scripts.
I love this one. One source called it the talking to your walls technique.
Yes.
It's just imagining specific scenarios where you'd need English, or literally just describing what you're doing right now. Like while you're making breakfast, you narrate it. I'm pouring the filtered water into the machine. Now I'm cracking 2 eggs into the pan.
And this type of daily context-specific narration builds critical muscle memory. But crucially, it forces your brain to retrieve the English word directly when it sees the object, the egg, the pan, instead of translating huevo or oof first.
That internal translator again.
It's the fastest way to train yourself to shut it off.
Okay, next, number 4 leans into enjoyment. Singing songs. I feel like this is how so many people get drawn into English in the first place.
Of course. And singing is really just a relaxed, rhythmic form of shadowing. You're practicing speaking, rhythm, intonation, all while memorizing vocabulary that's already culturally relevant to you. You're embodying the culture of the language, which is so much more motivating than a dry textbook.
Right. And finally, number 5 takes us beyond just correctness and into, well, real communication, mastering emotional delivery, using things like monologues and poetry. Why the jump to dramatic speech?
Because communication isn't just words, it's tone, it's emotion. If you can deliver a complex piece of prose or poetry with feeling, you're mastering prosody, the emotional weight, the cadence, the dramatic pauses.
So, like memorizing a movie monologue?
Exactly, like the famous one from Taken, or a challenging poem like Pose the Raven. You practice that heightened rhythm and control over your voice. It trains you to speak dynamically, not monotonously.
So we have the tools, but now we have to talk about the roadblocks. Because fluency feels so hard for reasons that are often systematic, they're hidden deep in our native language habits or our psychology.
And what's fascinating here is that these difficulties are often highly predictable, based on your native tongue. Let's look at the linguistic interference challenge by digging into a case study on Vietnamese learners.
Okay, so what's the fundamental mismatch that causes trouble for this group?
The root cause is structure. Vietnamese is a tonal, syllable-timed language. Every syllable carries roughly equal weight, equal time.
Okay.
English, on the other hand, is non-tonal and stress-timed. We stretch some syllables and we trush others. So when a Vietnamese speaker applies their native timing to English, it creates these systematic errors with individual sounds that can really impede intelligibility.
Can you give us an example that really illustrates that difference?
A classic one, noted by lecturers, is vowel confusion. English has these subtle differences between tense and lax vowels, like the long IZ sound in sheep and the short sound in ship.
Ship and sheep. Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is. Because those distinctions aren't used the same way in Vietnamese, students frequently struggle, and you get these massive differences in meaning from a tiny change in mouth shape.
And I imagine it gets even more complicated with consonants and word endings.
Absolutely. In Vietnamese, final stop consonants like P, T, K, A are typically unreleased. You stop the air, but you don't push it out. So if you carry that habit into English, a word like seat might sound like see.
Ah, the final T just
It
disappears.
disappears. And then there's substitution, replacing unfamiliar sounds, like the T8 in think, or the, with the closest sound you have, like a T or D, so you get tink instead of think.
And then there are the, what did the sources call them? Super segmental errors.
Yes, and that relates directly back to rhythm, that stress-timed problem we mentioned. If you're used to syllable timing, you tend to apply equal stress to everything. Instead of saying economy, you might say economy.
Which can sound very flat or monotonous to a native listener.
Precisely. And it dramatically reduces how easily they can understand you, even if your vocabulary is perfect.
Okay, so that's the structural linguistic side, but when we look at the case study with Saudi University students, the biggest hurdles were more about cognitive and confidence barriers.
Yes, and this was really eye-opening. Based on surveys of fluent Saudi EFL students, the single overwhelming obstacle they identified as the most obstructive was limited vocabulary. It scored an 81.3% mean hindrance score.
Wow. So it's not the rules, it's just they pause because they can't access the specific words they need.
That's it, exactly. Fluency breaks down not because they don't know how to build a sentence, but because they can't fill in the slots quickly enough.
And I'm guessing that feeds right into the psychological block.
It does. It feeds right into thinking in the mother tongue. That dreaded inner translation process just slows speech to a crawl. If you have to translate a concept into Arabic, then build the English sentence, spontaneous conversation is impossible. And of course, a lack of self-confidence just makes that block even worse.
So if we combine these two case studies, we have two huge problems. Systematic linguistic interference from your native language and these cognitive and vocabulary blocks that stop your brain from working quickly. That's a powerful diagnosis. Now let's get to the solutions.
Let's do it.
This is where it gets really interesting. How do fluent learners and experts recommend we overcome these problems? It's not just about practicing harder, it seems, but practicing smarter.
Right, using metacognitive and social strategies. And strategy number 1 is the power of preparation, which fluent learners swear by. They ranked organizing ideas in advance as 78.5% effective.
So half the battle is just setting the stage mentally before you even speak.
Exactly. It connects right back to that narration technique. You have to force your brain to access the language directly. And another key part of this is when you get nervous in a real conversation, keep it simple.
Don't try to be Shakespeare.
Please don't. Use simple, clear sentences. Don't try to build some complex grammatical structure when your confidence is low. Just prioritize getting the message across clearly.
Okay, that makes sense. Next up is seeking feedback, which feels essential to avoid those fossilized habits we talked about, where you repeat the same mistake until it's permanent.
It's critical. Getting constructive feedback from expert speakers was ranked as almost 75% effective. When you're practicing alone, you can't always hear your own stress errors or your vowel confusions. That expert intervention, even if it's just occasional, is what helps you recalibrate.
But what if you don't have an expert available 24/7? Isn't there a risk of just reinforcing bad habits if you're practicing alone?
That's a great point. And the key is critical self-correction. Record yourself speaking for 1 or 2 minutes, and then listen back with a specific checklist.
What's on the checklist?
Things like, are my final consonants clear? Where did I pause? How often did I use filler words like or This kind of self-analysis, combined with shadowing a good role model, can really improve the native flavor of your speech.
Okay, let's talk vocabulary, which was that number one obstruction. The experts agree we need to stop learning isolated lists of words.
Yes, we need to start learning collocations.
Word partnerships.
Word partnerships, exactly. A collocation is just two or more words that typically go together, like make a decision or take a shower. If you learn decision by itself, you might accidentally say do a decision. If you learn the partnership, you sound native.
This philosophy aligns perfectly with something called communicative language teaching, or CLT.
Right. CLT is the teaching approach that shifts the focus from being perfectly correct to just being understood. Fluency over precision.
So it's okay to make mistakes.
It's more than okay, it's expected. In CLT, errors should only be corrected when they actively interfere with communication. The goal is to build confidence to communicate despite your mistakes.
Okay, finally, we get to what seems to be the most critical component identified by every single successful learner: socializing and authentic context.
Yes, the most efficient strategy, ranked by fluent students, was socializing with fluent speakers. It scored almost 80%. Language is a social technology.
Mm.
Real interaction gives you immediate, authentic feedback that no solo practice can ever replicate.
And that must tie into motivation, too. The sources really emphasize using authentic materials, real-world stuff like news clips, songs, social media posts, not just sanitized textbook examples.
Absolutely. Authentic materials expose you to real language and culture. And for those dealing with anxiety about speaking, the advice is to start small.
Like with a mirror.
Use a mirror, a trusted friend, or even some of the new AI tutors that can give you judgment-free feedback in real time. You build confidence in those low-pressure settings before jumping into a real social conversation.
So after all that, what does this all mean? What's the big takeaway?
I think it's that true fluency requires a careful balance. You have to commit to that diligent solo practice, the shadowing, the narrating, to train the technical parts of speech.
To train your mouth and your brain.
Exactly, to minimize those linguistic interference errors. But you must combine that with social interaction to build confidence and apply the language in a real, meaningful way.
So don't fear the mistakes. They are, quite literally, the feedback that accelerates your learning journey.
We established that limited vocabulary is a major hurdle and that focusing on context, not lists, is the key.
But here's a final provocative thought for you to explore on your fluency journey. Since successful learners focus on organizing their ideas and studying topics before speaking, what if you chose one specific topic every week? Let's say climate change, or cooking, or the stock market. And for that week, you only consumed English content on that topic, and you actively noted only the relevant word partnerships and technical vocabulary.
How might that focused, contextual, and highly organized approach reshape your ability to speak spontaneously and professionally on specific subjects, making your spoken English sound not just correct, but truly compelling and natural?
Go organize your thoughts and then go practice.